aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item number 4, this is where folks who are in the audience who have an item that's not on the agenda may make any presentation they may like. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to anything that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 5. I presume you all had a chance to review the minutes. Are there any changes or modifications? If not, I get a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Monday, January 20th as presented.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Item number 6. Recommend council approve the commission comprehensive plan amendment for division of future land use. Who's here to speak to?
And I would assume we're working agenda items 6 and 7 together, and we'll make a separate motion.
Yeah, I presume that a lot of the information presented for 6 will apply to item number 9.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, typically we're just gonna go through them together.
I mean, I would prefer to not have a motion for 6 until we've also discussed them.
right, yeah.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Roger Silver with Millis Associates at 1250 Southwest State Street. We were here before you in December, and we showed you the beginnings of our concept and listened to comments, working with the city and Kathleen from Snyder Associates on trying to address comments and thoughts that we heard at the meeting and during prior comments. What we brought back today, it has some significant changes from what we showed you before. In general, the layout of what we're asking for is very similar, but one of the things we heard at the last meeting in particular was the concern about the size of the commercial area. So I believe you all got copies, and there's one up here on the screen. Biggest change we've made is by moving the row of R2 west, which would be we've basically taken what was this strip previously was this area. We've moved this west, increased the size of the commercial, and also started to address one of the concerns we had heard about, at least having commercial have an opportunity for access on the south side drives. Some smaller changes that we made that were, again, partially to address some comments we heard were we eliminated the single lot that was facing Southside Drive in the residential area. No new access. We understood that comment, so we have moved that westernmost road connection that connects to Southside east a little bit, which also opened up greater room for the park dedication, which is on that western side, so that park has grown a little bit in the northwest corner. We've increased the width a little bit of these of the R2A, in particular to provide enough room for, make sure we've got enough room for drainage and for buffers, and also in the case of this east-west leg, we made it wide enough that if we needed to make this a public street, it could be. I know that was one of the comments that Kathleen and I discussed, and feels like it's important that this residential area have another exit, and I know that they prefer it to be on 44th, and that's possible. We've looked at whether or not that would occur by extending this southern cul-de-sac, whether this would become a public street, whether there might even be some sort of a interconnection with the commercial, and we feel like we've got lots of options, and we mainly wanted to make the zoning of that R2A piece wide enough so if that was decided to be the route as shown on this concept, that instead of this being a private drive, it could. So this map is the only difference between what you're seeing in your packet and this map is that I did color up, or I have the R1A kind of shaded in a little bit lighter blue, so you could see the difference between where the in where we might have the, or where we're proposing the R1A ground. The R2 is pretty simple as far as being in this area, and obviously that's commercial. So, those are the main changes that we've made since we were before you last time. We feel like that biggest piece, again, was the increase in the commercial area. And we're hopeful that you will see these and grant us approval tonight. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any comments?
Yeah, I guess we did get some comments to them about the concept plan, although technically there's no formal action taken on a concept plan since this is not a PUD. So I just want you to be aware this will be back in front of you as a preliminary plat. We have asked that they plat the entire property as at one time, and even though the final plats and construction drawings would be phased, that way you again get to look at the overall project. So that's probably the main thing I had. We had some comments about things that will need to be addressed, such as we had a question on the 250-foot hydrant coverage for some of the steep lots off the cul-de-sac. They're flag lots, and it looks like the homes would be farther than 250 feet, and that your fire code requires hydrant coverage. So that's something we'll have to look at with the preliminary plat and the alternative ways that could be met. We had suggested that a conservation easement, partly because your comprehensive plan called for open space along that south area. We thought maybe a conservation easement that would cover the pond and some of the wooded areas would be, I guess, beneficial in terms of it being in keeping with that comprehensive plan, in terms of your ordinance for tree preservation and that kind of thing. We can deal with that at the preliminary plat stage and final plat stage as opposed to at this point in time. We have brought that up to them. So
That you're talking about along the south side.
Primarily along the south side is where your comprehensive plan calls for open space, but you've also got quite a bit, some heavy woodlands along the west side too. So that was kind of some of our consideration, especially, and then the other thing we had mentioned is at the time of final platting or preliminary platting, excuse me, I guess it technically would be both, that they may want to consider like restricting the number of accessory buildings. Again, if you're trying to keep it more in keeping with your comprehensive plan, which calls for open space there, sometimes large estate lots will wind up with 2, 3, large accessory structures, almost barn type things. And so we talked about the possibility of maybe putting some restrictions on the number and or size of those. So to keep the area to the south, particularly around that cul-de-sac, more open in conformance with the comp plan.
And those kinds of issues be part of what we're considering this evening, or would it be done
I mean, I guess it
as the plans come in?
We can do it as the preliminary plat comes in. At that point in time, you don't necessarily have a code requirement for it. So if you feel really strongly about it, you could make it part of the rezoning. That would then kind of make it more of a requirement where otherwise, if it's a kind of let's talk it through at the time of preliminary platting, we can do, still do that.
Thank you.
I guess I'd like to add that as part in response to the hydrant coverage, we certainly intend to comply with the requirements there. So whether it's extending a public street or making a driveway with proper width and thickness and have a turnaround, we intend to comply with that, make sure to meet that. Conservation easements, I think Andy's on board with providing those. I feel it's a little too early to show them as a specific width. We may actually want to go wider in some spots and so forth, but we don't really have too many issues. I don't know about the number of outbuildings. We haven't really discussed that yet, but in general, most of the comments that we've heard from Kathleen that we agree with and plan to address those at the preliminary plat stage when we have a little more information about topography and the utility needs of the area.
Shall we allow the audience now?
I would prefer that.
Is anyone from the audience that have any questions or comments?
I guess the one comment I guess
Can we have your name, please,
Doug Layton.
and address?
Yep, 1420 East Southside Drive.
Okay, thank you.
I guess as I've talked to neighbors, I think one of the biggest conversations that come up is, obviously there's going to be expense with road, expense with, possibility of sidewalks, expense with, it's hard for us to imagine the fact of a development going in, a developer making money on it, and us paying for those utilities. I understand, the concept is we would benefit from them, but I don't think any of us are unhappy with the way things are now. And I think that's one of the biggest conversations that comes up.
Yeah, I know that paving of that street and everything is an issue, but I think that's for the council to try and figure out how to do.
But I think as we're making a decision to move forward with that,
right.
It's hard for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, it looks great, but it's going to cost the people who already, have already been here paying taxes, living here, to suddenly have an added expense because somebody else is making money on this.
I don't have any suggestions on how that can be dealt with. I think that's, again, up to how the city moves forward with the development, this, presuming this gets approved.
Typically, and I guess I haven't researched this particular, but typically when new homes are constructed on a gravel road, if the sidewalks don't go in, Polk City Code requires sidewalks to go in, petition waiver is required. So there theoretically should already be something on file that requires the property owners to put in their sidewalks. I don't know where they are, that doesn't address the road, the paving of the road situation.
Paving of the road and so on.
Yeah, that's part of a building permit, the sidewalks.
I don't know if that really satisfies you, but hopefully it's more information.
I guess one more question would be, we talked a little bit about last time about the comprehensive plan and some of the things that are kind of already existing or kind of out there as possibilities. One of the things that would, I think, change this road a lot is there is a conversation or a diagram actually showing a road going north, just actually to the west of the development, going north clear to the next highway. And I don't know where that's at. I don't know how close that is, but that's going to really change the traffic flow through here if you have another road going north-south. And it showed it basically where the existing homes already are, kind of going almost in between them and then going straight. And I don't know if that's a realistic proposal or if that's...
Yeah, a lot of times with the comprehensive plan, there's lines in open land, and you aren't really sure where they're going to land for sure. But I think the thought process was trying to have some way for like this neighborhood and neighborhoods around it to access easily the school area that's being planned. So that was one of the primary, I think, reasons for that north-south corridor is how do you get kids and people wanting to go to a soccer field or whatever from here to there, feeling like they're in town in a neighborhood without getting out onto the main road.
But I guess that whole area is Ankeny School District.
I thought Polk City was on.
No, it's
It's
Ankeny
actually
School
school
District.
district, everything south of.
So where is the line?
44.
Everything on the side.
No, I guess it's even further than that.
118. 118.
My name is Scott Cherry. I live at 1412 East Southside Drive, next, just underneath the scale right. We're probably the last house on that side for Ankeny schools. Same across the street too. I agree with Doug. It's like there needs to be a little bit more better traffic flow. Otherwise, it's just going to have cars coming out. Less up here. They'll be moving and trucking a lot through here. Right now, it's all gravel. This would probably be better if we had something that connected maybe to the highway or something else. This particular drive, I don't know what. I know there's a neighbor that has a house right in here. So.
Can you point to where your house is?
It's probably.
Okay, thank you.
Right next to the pump stations.
Just for clarity, East South Side Drive is designated as a collector street on the comprehensive plan, which is why we're not adding any more allowing any more driveways, having direct access onto South Side Drive. So any of those lots that, you'll see that they're longer and they're oriented to the side street, and access will be prohibited, so they'll only have driveways off of the side streets rather than off the South Side Drive. That'll be kind of part of the platting requirements and noted on the final plat. Somebody looking to buy one of those lots would know that as well.
Well, as to the road construction, as the area north of this develops, which it will eventually, we will see more north-south roads to come through there. We'll have to deal with what's there now, but I mean, in terms of probably on the west side of that or whatever. Yeah, I'm not familiar with all the details of how those homes are on the north side of the South Side Drive. But, I know that as we go developing north of that area towards there will be eventually some north-south roads through there. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah. Okay.
Does it deal with this part?
Yeah. Okay. We're there, Jim and Connie Johnson,
You gotta tell them who you are, your address.
10398 Northwest 44th. We're just, that red line on the bottom,
Right.
that's our property line. Okay. Now, we're gonna have a whole bunch of different landowners. So the old fencing rules kind of go out. But I would like to have a chain link fence of the owner, put chain links, each one of those owners and those lots. And I don't know how this is going to be done. I talked to Andy about, we're going to talk about it. But that should be a chain link fence to keep children out of my land and keep my cattle out of theirs. And one other thing, North Bay, if any of you have ever been up there to know what a disaster that is for us because of the way the lay of the roads and the streets and everything drains right down on us, and such a force that it's making an awful mess in our creek. We may have to do something about that, but now when these lots, as they sit right now, probably wouldn't be a problem unless somebody put a garage at the back of it and wanted to put a driveway down and then run off some of the water from the streets. I mean, you control that stuff, surely. So wouldn't want anything like that. So the people that are going to build along our fence line make sure that they can't drain water down onto it, because it's kind of low when you look at the, almost like a dog leg there bend in that pond. If you go straight south of that, there's a low area there. So if something was put in there to drain down into that, that would be, and it is farmland. The guy farming it's right here, and he wouldn't like to go through it either. I'm sure mud and stuff that could be washed down. Make sure that in the future that nobody that has those lots does something like that. And, like I say, I don't know what ordinance it would be to put like a chain link fence through there, but for everybody's safety, that needs to be done.
Well, we got bulls.
We'll have cows, calves, and both running in that land. So I don't know what you've thought about that, or even understood that we. Actually, the pasture land is from would be from the beginning of the dam to the west. That's all pasture connected, and you can almost see the line. I see down where it. About halfway through the pond and the dog leg part of what I'm talking about. That to the right would be tillable farmland, and to the left is pasture land.
Mm-hmm.
But our cattle are in that farmland.
We graze our cattle on that pasture. So, and that's mostly Big Gully that's connected to the lots. There's a creek that runs about right. I just talked to Andy. It goes right through the middle of that green right there on west. and it's a really deep gully. So I don't think that they're not going to drain anything down onto us from that, but there's no way they could. But just that one area right in there, if somebody on the south side of that pond and towards 44th, if they did something that could drain down into our land, could make a real mess. So just keep that in mind for what you're doing in the future, what have you.
I think right now, as I was looking at what's been submitted, is that area on the southeast that will pretty much stay as it is, right?
There's
now?
some large lots.
Yeah.
But there's I mean, south of the cul-de-sac, it looks like 1, 2, 4, maybe 5 homes there.
Right, those are there now, right?
There are some homes there. I can't tell you how many for sure.
Is that a street that I'm looking at that goes right from that quarter sock straight down at the very east end of the pond? No? That's gonna be a driveway?
You went right here.
Yes, sir. Well, no, it goes straight down to our property. Yeah,
Just a property line.
that's just a property.
Now, this would be a flag lot, so this would be a driveway that would lead into a site. That's the intent there. These would be flag lots, so we have to, might have to add additional. Not like we're gonna use that.
Yeah, I'd want to have a little consideration for drainage on it.
Well, I think this would go to this pond, and we don't, it'd be our goal not to really change too much the drainage pattern that exists now. And most of everything north of the cul-de-sac in these areas should go down into this pond. You look at capacity
Down into the
that's on that pond, and maybe look at the dam and how much storage is there, and if any modifications need to be made there.
But if you have heavy rains, is that pond gonna hold it?
I haven't studied the pond well enough to answer.
Well, we have one, so we know what it can do.
Yeah.
And it can flood, and that would come right onto us. And there goes his crops.
But as far as the use of the land, other than the cul-de-sac, I mean, there's already several houses out there that they might add more rooftops, outbuildings and so forth. I wouldn't expect it to be a dramatic change in our service.
Could you change the flow of the land, like if they wanted a walkout basement, but it's built up?
Well, that sort of thing could happen, yes.
Yeah.
But I would expect the majority of it's going to drain down to the existing pond as currently.
Yeah, change the flow, natural flow is what I mean. So they can have a walkout basement, or let's say that lot, they wanted to the back, put up something back there with a garage or a big pole barn. And change the flow there, or things like that can happen.
Awesome. Pretty good hill that leads up north of that pond. I would expect somebody who would build that just want to consider take advantage of it. I don't know that every lot out here would be suitable. Some of them might.
Yeah, with more flow, you just probably need a bigger spillway or a bigger outlet.
And I need to redo your dam.
Don't know yet, yeah. It's possible. We would certainly study that in the preliminary plat, these contours, do a stormwater study. It would have to be part of the submittal.
The reason I bring up North Bay, if you've ever been up there to see how they did that, we didn't have any say or do anything up at the time. Their main street comes downhill, and everything on the other side feeds down into that. And they try to tell me that's natural flow. And it's a mess, making a mess out of our creek down there. It really is. Kind of too late for that, but I just hope all consideration is done as far as.
Just to give you an example, I mean, there's an existing farm pond that's over in what's now 12 Oaks, where Mark Bacchus used to have there was a house there, now it's developed all around it, still for under construction part of it. But there was an existing farm pond there, and as part of the development, they reanalyzed that whole pond, made sure it worked, actually had to reconstruct the outlet structure. So it's a new pipe and a new structure. Pond's still there. They kind of adjusted the level of the pond so that there was volume there to handle those higher flows. We would anticipate evaluating this pond the same way.
Okay, well, that's what I asked.
I have another question. What is going to happen to 44th Street? All this new traffic. We can hardly get out on our road now onto 415.
Well, there probably will be increased traffic,
The traffic lights, I'm sure.
and I guess that will
Any
remain
thoughts
to
of
be
widening?
seen what they would do.
Widening 44th or?
Well, we would have no control of that. That would be, that's a county road.
That, well, it won't be, the part that's next to the city, when you annex, you annex to the center line, so. So right now it's county and city, and eventually it'll probably be Ankeny on one side and Polk City on the other, and they'll have to work together on what and when that happens. At some point, yeah, I would anticipate some improvements to.
Well, you'd almost need like that one where I'm looking at, the multiple housing, or what do you call it? You'd almost need a turn lane there, and there's no room for 44th. But I don't, I can manage putting a turn lane in there.
Where?
Well, you just think when the people are going to stop to turn. If you're heading north, and there's no turn lane there for either way, coming from the south or the north, it's just a intersection right there that the traffic's going to probably get backed up, stop once in a while there. Without a turn lane, I don't know if it's possible to put a turn lane in. Or.
Well, that's something that probably have to address when they do the final workup.
Turn lane on our road?
44.
On our property? I'm giving up enough land.
No, it wouldn't be on.
I brought an aerial thinking maybe it'd show a little bit more, but it doesn't. It shows how far away our southern line is here. There's still quite a ways down. Apologize if I haven't zoomed out far enough.
Any other comments?
I'm Steve Meckley. I own property north of Southside Drive for my family. And I think we should be thinking forward to the future. And Southside Drive should be a concrete road with curbs and a storm sewer installed before you go any further, or at least as part of this plan. I've worked with the city of Ankeny on property we have down there, and they put in a storm sewer, a curbed street. The turn lanes, everything is already there before the development comes. I think we should really think seriously about getting that. And then the other issue is, who's going to pay for it? I don't want to pay for it. These guys don't want to.
Right. Well, that's another issue that is going to be left for the future as things go forward. I mean, we, as a commission here, can't require any of that. So it's going to be part of that, and I think the city is well aware of the issues with that street and what would need to be done. And I'm not sure what the council is thinking in terms of how to deal with that.
Yeah, I heard that there's going to be an asphalt road. Those don't last very long. Frost will break it up. And somebody's going to have to fix it. Probably by then be the city.
Well, it is a city now. It is a city now.
Well, the south half.
The south half.
Where did you hear it was going to be an asphalt?
I talked to Andy last time we met a month ago. He said it would be an asphalt road.
We have an ordinance against asphalt road. Correct?
For developers.
Developers are.
This is an existing municipal street.
Okay, so where does the city boundary then?
Center Line Street.
On the
On the
west.
east side.
On the west,
West
Southside
side
Drive,
of
that's all.
44.
it goes all the way. On the north is in the county. East side is still, east side of 44 is still in the county. The north side,
Yeah.
right, yeah, I was gonna see if I had a map
Yeah, I
that shows
thought-
it better, but I don't really. But the south side is all in the county. I mean, just past where Mr. Cherry's home is, kind of underneath the bar scale, is the city's lift station, or is the WRA lift station. That's in the city. Those homes that are on the north are in Polk County.
Really anything other
Yeah.
than the west
North side of
is
the
in the
third,
county.
north side of Third Street there,
No, the north side of East Southside Drive.
east south side drive. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So the city and the county have a 28E agreement on
On the.
44th and on East South Side Drive,
Okay,
because we each own half of it.
all right. So any, I would think that that's gonna have to be dealt with as part of this development.
Correct.
And that's gonna have to be worked out between the county and the city.
Well, probably the county and the city and the developer, I would guess in conjunction with the preliminary
Sure.
plat. So that
Right.
it's all in place before,
Right.
or at least the terms of the kind of
Sure.
agreement.
Get all that.
Share the
put
costs of
together.
how it works out.
So, I guess a lot of those issues are still to be decided as this goes forward. Anyone else? Yes.
Doug Layton again, at 1420. I guess as we were talking about drainage, I guess I had another question. It shows in the park area that the pond is staying. Do we know if that's really the case?
There's an existing low area in that right now that it could be considered a pond, it could be considered just kind of a wet area. I know that the comments said that the Parks does not want to own the pond. So we are also trying to not necessarily get rid of something that might serve as storm retention. So for now, we're showing it. What we might do is carve a little bigger park out of the northeast here. If we need it for our detention so that we can route stormwater to it, then what we might do is shrink these lots up, dedicate this as park, keep this as an outlaw, so we have our stormwater detention. Another possibility is that the pond gets filled up completely because maybe we're deciding we can direct stormwater to a different location, and we don't need that, in which case that could be filled in and given to the city. We understand the city doesn't want the pond on their park to take care of. Well, I guess we haven't gone far enough to know whether or not it's going to serve a function for stormwater detention, in which case we would want to use it and carve out a different piece, whether we assign it to these lots or whether they create an outlaw, we're not sure.
I guess my question for that is, if you look north and west of there, that's my pond. My pond's directly tied to that. It's
By pipe?
No, it's probably by, Andy and I've talked about this a lot. It's probably by sand channels. That whole area is so sandy, and so if when that pond goes dry, my pond goes down. So my worry is that pond goes, my pond's in trouble.
Well, that would certainly be something we would take into consideration. Like I said, right now, with the possibility of this northern section being directed stormwater to it and utilize it. But we have to rectify the fact that the city doesn't want it as a park. So one of our options is to still shorten up lots, carving out enough for the city park. We also need to get around it because we want the park to come down and touch what might be a future trail here. So that becomes kind of a pinch point. So it may wind up being something that gets reconfigured a little. And if that was the case, I would normally recommend that it be lined, which means it's connected to a sand shed. Also, we would certainly at least write down your comments, continue to examine as we move further into our grading design. If you're saying you would like to maintain that, that's obviously something that would be considered and not just immediately abandon that. So.
Anyone else? All right, then let's, any members of the commission have comments, questions?
Well, I've got a couple comments. Roger, I appreciate, number one, that you took the time and went back and responded to all of those questions and made some changes. There's a couple things I like about it, a couple things that still trouble me that I'll just I like the fact that with the high-density housing going away, that alleviates some of the traffic that had been planned up there. I'm talking medium and estate kind of layout here, which I like that part of it. My biggest concern is the commercial. Yet, I know you enlarged it, but then taking 30-foot buffer out of it. So I don't know how much net we gained. And 28 acres, you know, we don't have a lot of commercial ground potential. I wish that would still come down and be a bigger parcel. And it originally was like 80 acres, or close to 80, I believe it was. So my biggest concern is that, you know, once it's built out, then it's gone forever. So I'd like to see the commercial bigger myself. But the residential side of it, I think you're headed right. I mean, I like that part of it. I think this would be really nice out there. So those are, I guess, my comments, Dennis, on what I've seen so far.
Anything else? Comments, questions?
Yeah, I kind of agree on the commercial. It's just something the town doesn't have a lot of. Don't have a lot of great locations for it, so the more we reduce that, it's kind of losing out on that. So you do still have a trail connection plan, kind of on that same thought on the backside there. Or?
West?
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, another change we made to the park is, if you can see the little piece that we brought over to, that now connects, whereas this previously was isolated, we now have a piece that connects things from the neighborhood as well. Have a trail that would come down into the park. I believe that the comp plan shows a big trail along this route, and the city chose to extend the trail on down and make that connection. Just wanted to make sure.
Sure.
Comp plan shows a regional trail here. We've taken these 3 lots and then expanded the park back over and touch the Art Point Street so that the sidewalk turns to a trail that will go down the hill and eventually access this neighborhood. I don't. Again, a lot's going to depend on that pond. If that goes away, we could go a lot of different. That's going to stay, and the park boundary comes something north of that. We would have to preserve some sort of a way to get around it, so that we would like that to be included. There's a couple of issues as well, and I don't want to cut this thing off, so there may have to be some regrading, creation. I think you did, just to answer, Doug and Justin's comments about commercial. We did increase it by 6 acres. We're up to 28. I remember we had done a layout that showed we could get over 200,000 square foot of commercial, and that was on the 20. So I think we should be up 250, maybe as much as 300,000 square foot of commercial potential. So it is. I realize it's not as big as your comp plan showed. It's a significant size piece potential. Up there, I mean, easily put a big box store and still have 100,000 of other types around it. Significant here. We just wanted to preserve that southeast corner, and we wanted to have that buffer. Use buffer between, which is why we originally had that strip so narrow. We've made it wider just so we've got an option for a public street, and we can make that work. But otherwise, we're big lot residential right against commercial, and that's the concern on our side.
And guest comments that I would have, first of all, I mean, I'm certainly categorizing them from the standpoint of what's a issue that I have with the concept versus a issue with what's being presented tonight, which is, are the lines good enough to go forward with the rezoning? My gut feel is the lines that we currently have, I would give it about a 5% chance of it actually developing that way and it never being coming back to some minor alteration here or there. But I am understanding that you need something to move forward with at this point in time. As far as the issue with the rezoning, the biggest issue I have is again the size of the commercial. Talking as my previous commissioners have talked about, and a concern with that. If we do, as a commission, decide to go forward with a recommendation like this, I think we need to charge staff with getting on the agenda, us kind of reviewing commercial in this area on the comp plan, and perhaps making some changes if indeed we decide to move forward with this. I guess would be the only way that I could come to any thought process to take that much commercial out of this particular area. Regarding the site plan specifically, it's real rare that we here on the commission have an opportunity to actually plan and look and kind of help and review a parcel this large that actually includes several different kinds of residential and commercial. You know, as you look on Bridge Road here in our community, and the parcels to the north, those have all come in little segments, and it's really hard to get a big plan that's workable and that looks cohesive amongst the entire plan. Something that's key in our comprehensive plan is being able to freely from neighborhood to neighborhood and people to go get their ice cream cone and gallon of milk and things of that nature real easily without having to travel great distances. So, something that I'm really alarmed with the concept is if you want to go get an ice cream cone or a gallon of milk from any residential area, you need to go out onto one of the major highways and come back into the commercial area. So there's no way to, on a walking, pushing your stroller, riding your bike, driving your car, to get from the residential section to the commercial section. And that's against everything our comprehensive plan talks about.
Can I address that real quick? And so yes, we're showing you a concept, and concept for this area was that unit type. There is certainly a possibility, because again, you're not approving this specific concept as much as you're approving that area. We've shown this, that there's no reason why one of these couldn't continue to maybe even access it a couple.
But I just wanted to tell you my concern
We
now.
understand that that's a
So that
possibility,
when
maybe ask
you
for it.
come back with a plat, I'm even more alarmed at that point in time. You won't be surprised. And I know some of my fellow commissioners know that there's going to be at least a few others to be concerned on that as well. Another just a item that's reinforcing something that staff mentioned regarding the width of the street and parking on the street for what would probably be the east-west portion of the townhouse house street. I happen to live on a street here in Polk City that is by attached townhome. Parking is horrendous. If anybody has a card club or a small party, the street is all driveways. There's just no place between the driveways to park more than one car per 2 units, and then you move on. And ours is a private street in a cul-de-sac, so it makes it a workable situation because we don't have a lot of traffic. For that to be considered an access point for the residential to be coming out, you just need to make sure that we all understand that people aren't going to be able to park on that street, and we'll have to have some sort of off-street parking. You know, each unit's going to need to have its 4 spots, 2 garages, 2 outside. But you know, if they have any kind of gathering at all and it gets out on the street, there's just no place to go. You know, we have a similar issue with snow removal. Where do you put the snow? Because there's no curve. You know, and in this case, if it's a public street, you know, we'll scoop it into the driveway, and unfortunately, the residents have to figure out how to get it to
And the other thing we'd mentioned is if that does become a public street or the main thoroughfare there, that they would have to have, the driveways would have to be shared to minimize, so there wouldn't be a driveway connection at every unit. So, I mean, they'd have driveway access, but it'd be one shared driveway instead of two separate driveways. Helps a little bit with that parking.
And staff did a great job of presenting that. I just wanted to reinforce that that's also a concern of mine, and I live with it quite a bit, and I would hate to see a public street go through what we go through on our little stack private street. See here. I think lastly is just something, and this is just an idea, I would certainly not back rezoning based on not agreeing with this idea. But I think that given that you're going to have limited access points to the commercial off 44, something you may want to consider is taking some of the units of townhomes up against 44th on the north side of that street and convert over to commercial, so that even, maybe a couple here or something, even if your, a strip building goes like that or something, and not for the stated case of adding more commercial, but for the real reason of getting a access from your commercial down to this street to have an additional way in and out of your commercial, particularly if you're limited to,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think that would be something we would, but, because I think we're gonna have 600-foot spacing, and it would potentially be nice to, if we could use that, then potentially we keep the access from being too far north up against those one or two. So, yeah, I think it's a reasonable consideration.
You don't want to have a commercial property and can't get in and out of it. I think those were my comments.
I too would like to have seen more commercial area in that the townhome or the homes along that street coming off of 44th just seems incredibly pinched to me. And that with all those other homes going in, I don't see how it could be anything but some sort of decent sized public street be having, ingress and egress to those units, and also would then allow better access to commercial thing. So the townhomes coming off of Fort I really have a problem with those, because everything else is a pretty good compromise with the original land use plan and everything. It just seems like if there was some way to either not have those townhomes on the south side there and do something there to increase
Or
the
just
size
outside of the street.
Right. Yeah, something just to ease that, what I think will become a real traffic issue. Just even if it's built out like that, it would be a tremendous traffic issue coming through. So I guess those are my comments.
From a procedural standpoint, I would just like to ask that I understand if you take action on the comprehensive plan first, if that vote was in, I want to be guarded against putting my client in a position
Sure.
where he's going to lose out on a year before he comes back before you.
Right.
If that is your decision, we will obviously go and talk again and see what's done, but since these things are kind of structured in order, I guess, please help us get to a point where you feel like things are going to. I'd rather take another look than to lose a year. I don't know what necessarily signifies a significant change, because I know that's part of it, is that unless you come back with some significant difference, you will come back with some larger commercial or a little different configuration. What would that be? But we listen to.
I really, you know, if we were to move forward to approve this tonight, then I know that the actual platting and everything, it will change a little bit as we go forward with things, but I'm reluctant to approve the land use plan, the change in the comprehensive plan and these rezonings, because I just feel uncomfortable with the size of that commercial area. And if we approve that, then that's what it's going to be.
Well, and I know
I don't know.
from Andy's perspective, just to, you know, his goal is to begin to develop the southeast corner and to begin to develop the lots in the west.
I really
His desire isn't necessarily for the multifamily in between or the commercial. So, but the way it's been put to us is if you come in and ask for this, you better ask for everything.
Right.
So I guess
Right.
the other question might be, is there potential that we could get a comprehensive plan amendment approved on the residential west on Andy's property? Then maybe wait and come back and relook at the eastern side, but I know that also includes that southeast piece, which is
right.
open space, like that. So,
And also then the residential would only have access to the north. It wouldn't have any way to get to 44th Street under that situation.
well, again, I mean, this is a concept plan that's showing some ideas of where roads would be. We're not necessarily, if the comp plan didn't change, we still want that to pass through as far as black, whether it came from Snyder.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is if we rezone that, you decided to forward with that and not forward with any of the townhomes or commercial. If you move forward with it, what you move forward with wouldn't have any access to the street if we just zoned it, or if we just had that platted as an outline.
Is it possible that you could take it back and discuss enlarging that commercial, come back next month? I'm kind of in the same boat as Dennis. I would have a hard time approving it with that reduction of that commercial to that degree. I know you did enlarge it, but again, you know, I don't know what it is net after the 30 foot out of there. It's probably gain a few acres, but I'd rather see you come back next month with a little more commercial in there, if possible, and treat it all as one development. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Andy Snexler, and 1920 East South Side Drive. I own the west half. My mother owns the east. Part of the reason that I'm moving forward with this is that she's lived there since 1965. She's 85 years old. She still lives there. She's doing pretty well. But I feel that she should be allowed to benefit from owning that. And by you saying that has to be commercial, you're devaluing that thing. Because right now, if it can't be residential, she can't sell it for residential. She has to sell it for commercial. If you can show me that there's a commercial buyer or commercial use for that in the next 5 years, 10 years, I would be more apt. But what's going to go in? Walmart, gas station, Casey's? It's not going to happen. Not in my foreseeable short-term future. It's clear on the eastern edge of Polk City, so it's not surrounded by houses, by customers. It's not at a major intersection. I'm okay with giving up some commercial, but we need to be able to move forward on some investment. And I think we've compromised. I don't think it was 80 acres of commercial on the original comp plan, was it? 40? 45?
I don't even think it was 40, because it would have really just been the additional south piece. But, you know, one possibility would be if we were to come back with something that was, instead of requesting strictly C2, would allow a comp plan use. Well, we have this that would allow either multifamily or commercial in case. You know, if we were to expand that line down and say, well, it's got to be commercial or it's got to be multifamily, that's starting to be flexible. But I think that's where we'd like to have the flexibility from the use buffer. And again, Andy's concerned about is he gonna get a commercial buyer?
Yeah, I mean, none of us know that. I mean, that's,
Yeah, but look at it. I mean, it's kind of common sense. Until Steve decides to maybe move to the north, come into the city limits, do some developing.
No.
I don't think Steve was interested in doing that in the short term. It's not gonna happen. They don't need my track. No, Ankeny across the road, it might be there, but that's years away. They got a lot of ground to cover before Ankeny's gonna come in on the east side. Jim is on the south side. I don't expect Jim and Connie are gonna be selling off any development property in the near future.
Not as
So-
long as I'm alive.
I just don't see there being enough people there that's gonna warrant saving all that land.
and I guess maybe following up what Ron said, I think if we had a little more information on whether the commercial ground's available within the city limits now. I don't see a lot on our, land use plan, long range. That would be helpful to know too. I mean, where else we're gonna put commercial, did have some development, which we seem to be growing awfully rapidly. A lot of interest out here. So,
Well, if I can put in houses, it's gonna help.
oh, absolutely.
I mean, once that gets developed, houses, there will be things start to show up for that commercial, the use of that commercial area. I really, if there's some way to get a better connector off of their.
We discussed eliminating the cul-de-sac and extending that road on commercial. Tying that into the residential.
This one? When we look at this, is it a possibility? But there gets to be some real significant
Yeah, well-
topography problems over there.
Sure, well, the street that's there, if it was, I don't know how, the problems you'd have with that, as Ron was talking about, to have that as a basic, good-sized public street coming off of 44th back into there. I don't know how that would accommodate those townhomes through there in a way that doesn't cause some
There's
hazards.
a lot of backing.
Yeah, a lot of
Out of
hazards.
townhouse
and
right
issues
away.
there.
Yeah, and it may turn into this public street needs to actually go up through here. And then these townhome private drives connect on to, so there's other possibilities than what I showed there. We just wanted to widen this
Sure.
out. Not only for the ditches and buffers, but if this were to sweep up and connect through here, these two private drives connect, and then everybody's got a way in now.
I know this is just a concept plan, but sometimes the concept plans get more concrete as we go forward.
And I honestly don't think Andy would have that much of an issue with the commercial growing to the south if it weren't the fact that his mother's house and the way the trees, the existing trees that we're trying to preserve, have kind of demarcated already where the appropriate places to build houses were, not without regrading everything.
Right.
And so then you either have commercial directly against these, or you have a use buffer. Try to keep them narrow as we could. So that's kind of that is the pinch point for us too. But Andy, I guess this is your call. If you want to ask for them to vote, and we'll see if we can, depending on how it comes out, try to come back with enough changes. My concern is that there's a rule that if you come back with the exact same thing, you've got to wait a year. Otherwise, you have to start making enough changes. And I don't know if we came back after a no vote, just showing commercial right down to, is that enough of a change at that point? Or you can say, hey, sorry, any deal. That would be my concern.
Right, just for clarity though, that's not P and Z's consideration for a year. I mean, it'd be if it went to council and council denied it. It's what, so it's, if P and Z denied it, it
So I can
doesn't
come
necessarily-
back in a month or something.
You could.
Similar that shows.
Yeah,
the
it's-
different-
I'm just reading
That's,
it
thank you.
says-
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, no, it shall be filed or considered by council until 1 year at left.
In which case, I guess I would recommend we ask them to vote, see where things are at.
And I guess I'd just like to talk about, why I think I'm on the commission too. I think as a community grows, one of the biggest fears that I have for this community is that we could build a lot of houses and all of a sudden we're going to reach a big bulk in size, and our citizens are going to need services, and they're going to need groceries, and they're going to need the ice cream store, and all of the land is built out with houses, and there's nothing reserved for commercial. And that's one of the purposes we have, and one of the purposes of the comprehensive plan is to be looking far enough out that we don't get into that situation where we're starved of any commercial property. I disagree a little bit on the valuing thing. If you look at it today, I agree that the commercial property is probably worth less than residential property. But what generally happens is the residential property gets developed first. The commercial property doesn't get developed then for another, 15, 20 years. But when it's finally sold, many times it's sold for a higher price than the residential property was. But if you're 85 years old, that doesn't help you much. I'm not going to argue with that.
Comparatively speaking, I believe, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you're all familiar with Delaware Avenue and the interstate. Wasn't the depth of this similar to the depth of Delaware to the interstate?
Well, it's
just so you
quite
can
a bit.
wrap your minds around
You
how
could fit,
much they fit for Menards.
you
and
could fit
all
everything
those
from
places.
Menards to just about Home Depot, including all the out parcels. There's a lot of commercial. So I guess.
I mean, when you start talking 250,000 square feet of commercial, that's a lot of ice cream.
No, I was out there last night, or like yesterday afternoon, and it is a
That's
bigger
a couple
parcel
strip
than I
malls.
imagined it from.
It's a couple strip malls and a couple ice cream stores, Casey's, so that's a fair amount of commercial.
Well, any further discussion? We have a motion. I don't think you're going to get a motion. I think the matter dies for lack of a motion.
Well, thank you for your comments.
And, to address your question about the extent of expansion of commercial, I don't, when I look at what it was, I mean, that is a big, it's twice the area what we got, I think. But
I will at least say that
I'm not saying it has to be that, but if we could get, 45 or 50 acres in there somehow, to me, that would be a lot closer to what I think over time that could develop out there.
And I guess I'm less concerned about first of all, I'd like to see some deep commercial. I'd like to see not just strip mall commercial. So we need some place in our community for commercial that's not just a strip mall with parking in front. But I'm also more concerned this piece with its length on 44th than I am with its depth, I guess is the way to word it. And we all have our individual opinions on the commission. I want to make that clear. But I mean, from my perspective, if there was a way to move the commercial further down on 30 or on 44th, even if it didn't go as deep as it is now, and maybe have some sort of a smaller commercial along the southern part, and then have it be deeper as it's showing here as it goes further north. I don't necessarily think it needs to. And like I said, when I drove out there last night, kind of parked and looked at the parcel, Yeah, it is a bigger parcel than I looks on the, it is bigger than it looks on the, on the diagram.
You gotta remember, you're looking at 165, 170 acre project,
Yeah.
which is bigger than probably.
And I couldn't quite figure out all of the water flow and stuff too, because the tension needs to come out of this as well as buffering. And or at least have a plan for that, so that's also a concern, is how much of that isn't.
That's more of a preliminary plat issue.
It is, but it means that some of that acreage isn't really gonna end up being utilized.
I guess I don't have as much heartburn about the amount of commercial. So for that, yes, it's great. Although you are a landowner and you want to develop it, I get it. If there was better access, your concern, I agree with the through road, however you want to do that. And would like to hear from neighbors how you feel about the amount of commercial space also, since you directly impact. I guess that's where I come from. Appreciate that, yes, indeed, we want to have the commercial. We need it for tax purposes for our community. But on the same token, there is a balance. And I guess that's where we have to come in. Where is that balance? So I appreciate it. And I appreciate this versus what you initially, and that you listen to us, you listen to the neighbors. I appreciate that. So.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, number 8. Preliminary plat for Lakewoods, Plat 2. Folks, we need to do business here, so if you have discussion, thank you for coming. Thank you.
New developments are always fun, aren't they? Good evening. My name's Caleb Smith. I'm Fleur, representing Todd and Christy Drake, who are the developers and owner of the property. I want to apologize for Todd and Christy. They had a client meeting. As you know, the Drake home is in town. They had a client meeting that got pushed to later tonight, so they had to be at that meeting tonight. That's why they're going to apologize for that. Before you tonight is the preliminary plat for Lakewoods Plat 2. We looked at this for a PUD amendment a few years ago. It's kind of been on a stop-go process with Drake's. But over the winter here, we've been moving forward with a plan to develop underway this year, so that's very positive in this area. The preliminary plat in front of you, very consistent with the PUD master plan that was approved. Honestly, the biggest change to it is we now have exact footprints that they want to do for the villas and the bi-attached product in the project area. There's still 50 units planned. The road configurations are generally very much the same as what they were proposing. Obviously, zoning is still in place. Just so you know, the western rows lots are all PUD, and the one row of lots on the east side of Roosevelt is R1A, lot widths and size of the gym. Shown. This is just kind of the next step in the process. We also have construction drawings and site plans for the private that we'll be working through the process with Snyder here, so we'll be here again in a few weeks to take that through. But again, I'd like to get construction going this year and certainly have to answer your questions again.
So I just have one comment, I relate it, you might have heard it already, but the easement, I think just where the stormwater discharge is there.
It's
You know
one of the
about
things,
that
yep,
existing easement there.
correct. We just discussed that with the Drakes. We'll get a game plan to have that conversation
Okay.
with Nick. Hopefully we'll figure out the best way to resolve that and get that taken care of.
Perfect. Great to have this moving forward.
It is.
You're thinking spring it might start?
As soon as we can get going, they've got another project this year, like bundle this one up with contractor, get it going, so as weather allows, certainly, we started this project back in 2004, so at this point in time, I'm just excited to see it move forward.
I can imagine.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, they sent a revised submittal, and I think it addressed all of our comments. We asked a note regarding the ownership, and that was added. They indicated there wouldn't be a subdivision sign. If there is a sign for the townhomes, we can deal with that on the site plan part of it, so it doesn't really affect the preliminary plat at this point. And then there's either some tweaking to a storm sewer where the structure actually was set just slightly outside the easement. So during the construction drawings, either they'll adjust that location or we'll adjust the actual easement as it's shown on a final plat. So, so concept is there, so we don't have any issues.
Just out of curiosity, which side of Roosevelt would normally be the side that parking allowed?
Very good question.
You know, I honestly, because I'll look at Roosevelt to the north, so we'll look at that.
Roosevelt right now allows parking on the east side.
So I would envision they would continue that same thing because we've asked them to move the water main.
That would
the
be the
water,
better side.
yeah. Yeah, we asked them to move the water main to the other side so that it matched, and typically what they try to do is have the no parking on the side with the street lights so that they can mount the no parking signs on the street. Anyway, there's a whole process there, but the water main's on the same side, it all seems to work.
Yeah, I did have just as a point, the units on the west side of Roosevelt and the units along Lincoln Way will all be part of a homeowners association. So that will be, is this like Wolf Creek where the maintenance and all that stuff will be done by the association?
On the exterior.
On the exterior, so on,
yes.
okay.
As I understand, that's how they structure it. Now, the inner workings of that HOA could be a little different. They may be two sub-associations because the bill is obviously on the street.
Right.
They're on a private street. But
I mean, they're both set up so that
it'll all be maintained consistently.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, so it should be all look
right.
the same. All
and then on the east side of Roosevelt will be just a regular single family thing.
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions? Commission? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend to council approval of the preliminary plat, Lakewood Plat 2.
Second.
Call?
Triplett,
Yes.
Bowersox,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Olfest,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Hagan.
Yes.
I apologize, I should have put you first.
It's okay. Those things, it's better to let the citizens.
Well, I think it was good to have the folks here.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 9. Any reports? City engineer,
I think I have it.
liaison.
I'd just like to say that I went last week over to Alma to the meeting about the school bond issue and things that are happening over there. There's going to be one this Thursday night in Polk City. I encourage you all to go. They have answered some very good questions. I'm sure there'll be some issues with where the school is going that will concern you guys down the road, correct? And so
What's the time frame on that?
They said at that meeting in Alman that they expect to be done by 22. Be
Done
classes in there
building?
in 22.
2 years.
Pardon?
Where the NAP,
It's out of where the technology campus.
yeah.
Out
And what are they
List
putting
of
on
Make
there?
Drive.
Out,
The glue.
Another grade school.
Fourth,
Oh,
they
I
kind of
love
moved
it.
it a little bit farther.
Yeah.
Closer to there, yeah.
Further
Yeah.
west.
Yeah, they moved
Yeah.
it further west.
Yeah.
Where the high originally
Yeah.
was.
Well, farther west than that. It's actually in the area that's now blue that was going
And
to
I
be
think
industrial.
the original high school land is going to be on the north side of this drive, if I remember right. So
okay.
I don't know what's changed with why the property's located, but
Are they buying the land?
supposedly they've already got it bought, or at least have an offer on it. That's what was said at the meeting.
Okay. Like last time, NAP was going to donate,
Kind of.
kind of. Kind of, okay. I never heard the kind of.
We were going to have to put the street so.
Oh, well, yeah.
You should go.
But it's, and I should have brought the stuff with me, the numbers. It's overwhelming what the numbers are now. North Polk West Elementary is still the most populated school, including the high school. We have more students there. We have 5 kindergarten sections,
Yeah.
as opposed to 2 in Alman. And
There's, on their website, there's real good graph, very good graphs.
yes,
That
yes,
show
that's
everything.
well, good. That's
Yes.
the same thing they gave us, but I haven't looked at it on the website.
Yeah. It's over several hundred.
Are you
With
going to be
less
coming to the
grades.
meeting?
Yes, yes.
I'm just curious, if will be the same meeting.
That's the reason I went to the first one.
Yeah, I was busy for the first one, and I think
Okay, any comments from the commission?
Just a real quick item on our community visioning committee. We have monthly meetings. We have a big item coming up on February 29th, which is where we are having Iowa State come down, have different segments of our community be represented in the focus groups. Once that is, and try to get information as far as what needs are from each of those segments, and then review that. Iowa State will take about a month after that before we see anything, so it'll probably be our April meeting.
You said you would not be
I will
here
not be here next
next
month.
month, okay?
So,
Neither. He will be gone next month as well, so we have
I'll be here.
I am here.
and
I'm gone.
you're gone.
In March.
Well, we have a quorum.
It's spring break.
Yeah,
Well, Justin's checking his phone. I don't call that a quorum yet.
That would be what? Be the 16th.
16.
Yeah, I will be gone as well. We won't have a quorum, so we're gonna have to do something. We'll only have 3 of us here. We have 4 people gone, so we won't have a quorum.
See what we can do.
It's not,
Is Doug gone all month?
I think for 3 months, wasn't it?
yeah, he's gone, and he said he would be missing this one and the next one.
Just, okay.
And in terms of planning for March, we will be gone from 18th through the end of the month.
And
So-
I will as well.
So anything we do would have to be,
The same date, the 18th?
I think it's 9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's close
Is that the
enough.
same trip?
yeah, so
I'm gone the 11th through the 17th.
it's a tough month.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to know.
Something to check into there.
Maybe sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Maybe pushing things up.
And I'll be gone through the 9th of March.
Oh, we have no window.
Wow.
But there's only one, so.
She's,
Yeah, it'd just be one during my time.
so after the 9th, the 17th.
Before the 11th.
11th.
Yeah, I'll be gone the 4th, 11th.
Well, the 10th. I don't know what. Wow. I don't know, if they would come back, we could probably try and schedule a special session.
I am aware of one other item that was going to be moving forward in March.
Can anyone call in?
I don't know if call-in is permitted, because
I've done it.
I know, but I'm not sure that.
I don't know for our
You
quorum.
better talk to the,
Can you? Yeah.
really?
Mhm.
I
Yep.
thought we had to be present in person.
I don't think so. No, we'll
I'll
double check.
check on
but-
that one.
Is anybody able to call in? Is that an option?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Can anybody?
I'm on a cruise ship, sorry.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
No,
how
I
mine
can't.
will be.
I could call it.
Okay, we'll correspond and get
No, you
something
won't on a cruise
scheduled.
ship.
I'm not on a cruise ship.
Oh.
Belize in general.
Oh.
Yeah, what it'll be like. Where we'll be.
Yeah, I don't think the council is allowed to call that.
Yeah,
Yes.
They are?
We've done, I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
we've had-
it's
it's-
allowable.
happened several times.
Boy,
Not me.
interesting.
I still do roll
I
call
wouldn't
like
miss
they're
all of
here.
that.
Yeah.
Problem would be if this
All right.
came back.
Well, if that's okay. I suppose we can work that.
I make motion to adjourn. There we go.
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I really kind of hated
Yeah.
to not do something.
Yeah, I know, I was kinda wondering.
It just wasn't. I don't know if that was one of those.
Yeah. It's a bottle.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, you know, by the Lydians or just that one street that we refer to all the time.
Yeah.
Where they were parking, they were single.
Yeah, I felt it was frustrating because I really felt they did a nice job of trying to meet
Expectations.
and the planning, you know, the long,
Well, yeah, but
budget that plan and stuff and all that stuff.
But I was separating
Bottleneck